everyone again. My name is Harshal Doshi, and I represent a company called Databahn, and I'm here to help you reduce your SOC operations cost by 50%. Does that excite you? Right? Security operations is expensive. It's complex, and it involves a lot of time, money, and resources. I'm sure as representatives of the banking and financial security of India, and as CISOs, and running security operations for many, many years, I'm sure you understand it's a highly regulated space. And with the expansion, or rather the explosion of data that we are seeing in enterprises today, it's becoming more and more difficult for you to manage cost, complexity, and the cyber risk in your environments, right? We at Databahn believe that yes, security is complex and it's expensive, but it shouldn't be obnoxiously expensive, right? I think there is a space for us to balance these verticals or modules in your environment, and that is what we are here to solve for, right? So let's dive into this. When you look at security operations, what are the key issues that CISOs have highlighted to us when we interviewed hundreds and thousands of them across the globe, right? The first one is that your infrastructure is becoming more and more hybrid, right? You have your applications, your servers, your networking devices, your security devices, both on-premises and cloud. So ingesting data from that varied hybrid infrastructure in your environment is becoming more and more complex, right? Security operations are spending anywhere between 4 to 8 hours, okay, to onboard a single data source. That's a hell lot of time, right? And at the same time, you're using 90% of your data engineering capacity to just ingest logs into your platforms, right? So that's the first problem. The second problem is volume reduction. You know, every CISO that we've spoken to has said that data ingestion in their SOC is increasing at the rate of 30 to 35% every single year, but your budgets are not, right? So how do you manage the capacity? Say, for example, you've bought a SIM license for about 1 terabyte, and your volumes are increasing 30% every year, but you've not bought the licenses for that. How do you manage a 3 to 5 year or 7 year project without that cost predictability? I think that's one of the key reasons why security operations heads are grappling with how do I bring in my crown jewels without increasing the cost, right? This is one of the single most biggest issue that CISOs have told us while running their security operations. When you look at pipeline health, I think this is a very ignored area as far as your security operations is concerned, where you don't have visibility into where your data is getting dropped, what is the health of the data, right? Which are the noisiest devices, which are the whispering devices, how do I really real-time alert on all of that, right? So pipeline management in your security operations is a key factor or a key issue that CISOs have highlighted to us. And finally, the entire data management itself, right? How do I make sure that my retention is taken care of, right? At the same time, my threat detection is on par and I'm compliant, right? So when you put all of these together, right, there is a big room for you to optimize your security operations today. And Databahn, as a data pipeline company, is guaranteeing that we will help you reduce your security operations cost by 50% and increase your efficiency at least by 80% more, right? So the question is, how do we really do it, right? Let's look at some more statistics, right? When we kind of researched about it, we found out that over 60% of the data, and this is a shocking number, 60% of the data that you're ingesting in your SIM platforms today is useless. I'll not mince my words. That data is not getting used either in your correlation rules, they are not getting used in your threat hunting, they're not getting used in any of the compliance reporting that you're doing. But you're still paying heavy SIM license costs to ingest your data into your SIM platform, right? And the problem not only limits itself to your SIM, the same problem exists in your observability space as well. You know, whether you have your Datadog or a Dynatrace, all of these platforms, they charge you by the amount of data that you ingest into the platform, right? So what are you doing? You're still ingesting, you're still collecting all of the data, and you're paying heavy SIM license cost for it. And I'm sure since you're all running your security operations for many years, there is this peculiar problem in the SOC industry called vendor lock-in, right? Once you start using a SIM vendor for about 2-3 years, it's almost impossible to get out of them. Even if you don't like the analytics, even if you don't like the behavioral analytics or the capability, because they store the data in their proprietary format, right? So how do you get the control back of the data that you own and get that flexibility of changing your analytic solutions whenever you like, right? Are these problems that you are grappling with? Can I see, raise of hands that yes, these are problems that you're seeing in your daily life? Absolutely, right? So let's see how do we really solve this, right? Databahn is a data pipeline solution, and what we do is that we help you collect information from a wide range of sources. On your left, I'm not too sure whether this diagram is seen properly or not, but on the left-hand side are your sources, and what we do is that we become your first point of collection. We enrich that data, we filter out the noise, okay, and send only the security relevant data to your SIM, and everything else we send it to a long-term storage, which means that from a retention perspective, you're compliant. We help you collect all the data, but only send the relevant security data to your SIM platforms, right? And while we do that, we automate a lot of your data engineering aspects as well. Now, what do I mean by automating your data engineering aspects? You're spending a lot of full-time employees or resources to engineer data, which means that you're having to write manual parsers, you're having to write manual normalization logic, manual enrichment logic, right? With Databahn's AI capability, the days of us writing manual parsers are gone, right? We help you ingest the data, at the same time build parsers automatically, which means that even if you have a non-supported device or a device which is upgrading its logging format continuously, you don't have to either write or upgrade your parsers continuously. The system will do it for you, right? So one, we are helping you volume control your data to at least 50%. Some of our customers have gone up to 60, 70, 80% as well, right? At the same time, we are helping you automate your data engineering. And third, which is the most important, is that we are helping you optimize your threat research or your threat hunting aspects as well. Now, how do we do that, right? Databahn is probably the first product company in the world which has come up with this concept of data reef. And I'll speak about it in a bit. I'm sure we all have heard about data lakes and data oceans, but what is a data reef, right? And let's get into how we do that, and I'll come to the data reef in a bit, because that's the most interesting aspect of our solution. So visually, this is how the solution looks like, right? On the left-hand side, you have all your data sources, which pumps into the Databahn data highway. And what we do is that we normalize, enrich, denoise, transform, vectorize, and give you insights, and only route the security relevant data to your SIM, right? And here we guarantee a minimum 50% reduction to you, right? And everything else, which is the noise, we send it to a long-term cold storage. Now, the obvious question that you all might have is that, how do you make a decision? Whether a specific event is security relevant or not, right? And what if Databahn misses something important and sends it to an archived storage, and I miss out on detecting an important threat, right? I think that's the obvious question that we get all the time when we speak about denoising. The answer to that is very simple. Our founders have a very rich threat research background, and the content is what differentiates us from any other data pipeline solution in the market here, right? Now, what do I mean by that? Now, when I subscribe for an OTT platform, what do I look at? I look at the kind of content that they are providing to me, right? And that's what differentiates us, which means that our policy engine today is mapped with the MITRE framework, okay? Which means that we already understand what are the event types that you require to detect a specific TTP, right? And also we've built two-way integrations with most of the SIMs today. So what we do is that we read your SIM configuration, right, and understand that how have you configured your threat detection rules, and we will not touch those events because those are the events that you require to detect your threats, right, along with the MITRE. Everything else we suppress and we route it to a long-term storage, right? And we go a step ahead, right? Not only do we denoise entire events, but we can also redact at the attribute level. Now, what do I mean by that, right? Say, for example, there's a Zscaler event which has 20 attributes as part of that event, but you're only using, say, 5 attributes out of the 20 to detect threats. Why do you need the remaining 15? We actually go to the level of redacting that entire event and only sending the relevant attributes to your SIM so that you denoise at an attribute level as well, right? Now, once you go to that level, 50% becomes like a no-brainer, right? As I said, some of our customers have gone up to 60, 70, 80% as well, okay? And that's where you start seeing value that, hey, running security operations was not really that expensive as I thought, right? And sorry for saying this, but since the time SIM companies have gone from an on-premises to a pure SaaS model, their licensing have changed from perpetual to a data volume ingest-based subscription license. Now, what does that mean? That you will get a monthly invoice in terms of how much are you ingesting in your platform today, right? And I don't want to name those SIM companies today, but we've seen customers that they've budgeted for a specific volume, but in the first 2 months itself, they have overshot their license capacity by multiple times, multiple X times, right? So it's a huge issue today to kind of balance these aspects. Now let's talk about the key values that we provide so that you understand the quantifiable value that we deliver. Firstly, the number I have been harping on for a very long time, minimum 50% reduction in your log volume, 80% automation in your manual data engineering, which means that, say, for example, you're running a SOC where you have 5 full-time employees doing data engineering, right? We can reduce that by 80% using our AI capability so that they don't have to write any manual configurations to ingest the data into your platform, right? And we'll come to Reef where we give you 90% improvement in your visibility, right? Now, one of the other licensing mechanisms that these SIM companies have is that they're not only charging you on the ingest of the data, they're also charging you basis how many queries you fire for your threat hunting, right? So, and that is also a pretty expensive affair. And that is what we solve using Reef. Reef is industry's first micro-indexed database powered by MCP, right? And what do I mean by that? Since Databahn understands which is the relevant data and which is not, we create a micro-indexed database of the most important and relevant data in your SIMs, okay? And hence, optimize the way in which you search for your data. So we are actually giving you a ChatGPT kind of an interface that you can actually have a knowledge interaction with your data, okay? At the same time, not paying huge compute costs for your threat research, right? And there's some fantastic innovation that we are doing, on these lines, where model context protocol is becoming our equilibrium to make sure that you are able to actually manifest and execute a federated search in your infrastructure. Now, what do I mean by federated search? Most of the large enterprises that we see today have data distributed across various locations. Now, for you to do a centralized search, you have to bring all the data into a central location. No. You can keep it there. Okay, we can help you do federated search in place using Data Reef powered by MCP, right? And with the lowest possible cost, possible. I've already spoken about these, value propositions already in my conversations. But I'll be happy to take questions. I know I'm running out of time, so that was Harshal Doshi. If you have any questions, happy to take any questions that you have. Yes.
Yes, ma'am, we're just getting the mic.
You said you are using AI for
filtering the data. What is the accuracy rate? I mean, what is it happening that some data false positives, true, some data is correct, but you are not ingesting?
Yeah.
So how do you, what is the, and how are you correcting, improving that?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? Like I mentioned, our policy engine works on two key aspects. One is that it is mapped to the MITRE framework, right? So we already understand what are the event types that you require to detect the right threats. And secondly, we also look at your SIM configuration, right? So say, for example, if you've configured your correlation rules to detect a specific kind of a threat, and those are referring to specific event IDs, we'll not touch them, right? So the chances of us missing out a relevant event actually drops down to 0. And because it is continuous integration, even if you change your policy configuration in your SIM, we'll update the policies accordingly, right? So that's how we make sure that we don't miss out on any relevant data. All right? All right, so that was my time. Any more questions that you have? Yes, yes, sir.
So SIEM already has an inbuilt facility to aggregate the logs. To that extent, you already optimize on the storage. So how will your product help in that?
Yeah, I think there is a commercial answer to this and there's a technical answer to this, right? Firstly, the volume of data itself, right, when you look at the industry trend, is increasing by about 30-35%, right? Which means that whether you look at mergers and acquisitions or whether you look at your own infrastructure growth or data growth, it's pretty high, right? Secondly, aggregation is a very basic functionality of any SIM, which means that if I get 10 login failures, I don't ingest 10 events, I aggregate them into a single event and I send it, right? But that hardly contributes to any volume reduction, because here we are not talking about whether the event actually is relevant or not. We are actually only doing a mathematical function of aggregation. What we do is go beyond that and say that from a threat research perspective or from a threat detection perspective, whether that event is actually required for you to run analytics at all or not, right? So we are going at a completely different level to understand whether you require that event to be ingested into the SIM at all. Aggregation comes later on, right? We also do aggregation as part of our platform, but that hardly contributes to any volume reduction over here, right? So my answer to that is, even if you have all the aggregation in your world configured in your SIM, we can still guarantee a 50% reduction in your data, right? All right, unless we have any more questions, that was my time. Thank you so much. And we are at the Innovation Arcade. We'd love to have a detailed conversation around this. Thank you so much.